Good morning, everyone. I am Oscar Williams Group, the Senior City Correspondent for Yahoo Finance UK, and I'll be running the next session, which is Shiny New Things, Luxury Goods on the Blockchain. Let me introduce my panel who are here to discuss this with me. To my left, we have Fabian Vogelsteller, who is the founder of Luxo, which is an open blockchain ecosystem specifically created for the fashion and lifestyle industry. Next to him, we have Pedro Lopez Belmont, who is a solutions architect at Richemont International, which is the holding company that owns luxury brands such as Cartier, Chloe, and Dunhill. And then finally, we have Vanessa Grelet, who's the executive director of ConsenSys, who I'm sure you all know is the blockchain company that specializes on Ethereum. And Vanessa leads the social impact art, luxury goods, and retail arm of the organization. Now, perhaps the most obvious place to start talking about luxury goods on the blockchain is counterfeiting. Counterfeiting costs the luxury industry an estimated $100 billion a year. And a lot of people hope that blockchain could offer a solution to this problem. Now, Pedro, I want to start with you. You're at the coalface of this within a luxury group. Tell us about how you see blockchain being applied to these types of problems.
Well, I think blockchain is it's an idea technology for this, okay? But the problem is quite complex. For example, only in watches, according to the Swiss Watchmaking Association, the problem, it's $1 billion per year, okay? That's a lot of figures. We have market researchers that says that 30% of people would be willing to buy counterfeits, knowing them, they are counterfeits, just by a 50% of the price, okay? We have some other figures, like 40% of buyers thinking that it's our responsibility to fight against counterfeit. So it's, as you can see, the problem, I think, is quite complex. It's not as obvious as, as trying to identify the fake goods. Okay? Yeah. But I think blockchain can really help us to tackle all this. How? I think just taking 4 or 5 key points. For me, from my point of view, is very important the association, for example, between the physical good and the digital twin. And it's something not as obvious, because we always think in, for example, a watch, okay? We can use IoT devices, is like the most obvious thing. But you have other situations, and maybe with not that obvious cases, then you can use IoT devices, right? For example, if you want to buy a very expensive trip, totally tailored to your needs, that's an experience. You cannot put an IoT device on that. It would be a bit difficult. So other technologies like artificial intelligence, I think, are also key for this. I think this is a bit the missing point. I don't hear speak about artificial intelligence. I think it's a good companion also to blockchain and fight against counterfeits.
So it's about a holistic approach.
Yes, totally. And I think we're just at the beginning. We need to explore that. And we need to explore that as an industry. I mean, not only in silos, not only each company on their own. I think it's an industry problem, and we need to tackle the problem as an industry. We need to look for standards. For example, I was speaking just right before with Fabian about that. And I think we need to work together, okay? For the digital twin, as I said, to make the user experience really easy, to provide the information right there, to make it available. We need to tell the people these are the legal, these are the legit goods. And this is the easy way to really check and to really know if that product or that service you are interested into is legal or not, is legit or not.
And Vanessa, obviously you deal with a raft of different companies. Is there appetite for cross-collaboration like Pedro is talking about?
We see increasingly a lot of industry and not only luxury goods collaboration and consortia plays. It's really important because the technology allows you to create those structures without raising issues around competition, because basically you're creating a common market infrastructure and common standards for the industry to progress. In terms of counterfeit, it's not only a loss for the companies, it also has implications because people who are the counterfeiters also launder money through those channels, and so it becomes a wider problem, not just people buying fake bags. It's really a societal issue that we need to tackle, and as Pedro said, it needs to be tackled together.
And Fabian, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about how Luxo is addressing these issues and what specifically your platform offers that are perhaps esoteric to the luxury industry.
Yeah. So my background is in Ethereum ecosystem. I've been with the Ethereum Foundation for the last 4 years, and it's also somewhat in standards because I proposed the ERC20 token standard. Luxo is basically, in my opinion, the next step. So how do we move anything to mainstream? So how do we move this whole space to mainstream? We all think, okay, maybe we all use Bitcoin, or we all use Ethereum. But as we have seen already in the last few years, the only way moving forward is actually having a lot of blockchains. And we have more than 2,000 blockchains where the top 20 are a lot used, the other less used, but we have a lot of blockchains around different communities. And what Luxo is basically a blockchain for that lifestyle world, specifically targeting that audience, making use cases and collaboration possible, and fostering standardization within the ecosystem. And there's currently no blockchain which is even looking into that direction. When it just comes to standards, I mean, it would be hard to discuss any kind of luxury or fashion-based smart contract standards within the ERC EIP repository. That would be not the right place to do so. But in a blockchain where it's targeting that kind of audience, it's easier possible. And like you said, the most important thing is synergies. The most important thing is standardization, because this allows then all of these interesting things to happen. I mean, if we just look out here, all of the things which happen in the blockchain space, just the last 2 years exploded because of the agreement on one single standard, which is the ERC20 standard. And then we have all kind of businesses and ideas and innovations revolving around that, because everybody can have now one standard. They can all modify the way they like, but they still are interoperable. And we need those kind of standards in the industry. We need those for identities for items. We need those for tokenized communities and forms of how you claim things and how coupon systems work and all of those kind of things, so that it's interoperable, that you can easily go with one app to multiple brands, to multiple stores, interact with events or festivals, and have the kind of common experience within one environment. Because the world we live in right now is the world of endless logins and endless application, and we have to download new apps all the time and create new passwords, and that's obviously not fun and super complicated, and that's kind of the biggest entry barrier to adopting anything new. It's oh, do I have to sign up again and have to create another password? The Web3 world is actually able to solve that. In fact, solve that pretty good and more secure. And this needs blockchain and standards, and that's what we are striving for.
And we've been talking a lot about putting lots of luxury goods, the wide range on the blockchain. But Pedro, are there any low-hanging fruits in the industry? Obviously, luxury refers to a wide range of products and services. What do you think blockchain technologies are the most applicable to when it comes to specific products or services?
Well, it's it's a tough question. I think for the moment, at least from our point of view, it's difficult to say if any specific technology can be particular to or can be the best fit to any specific solution. In our case, we are trying to explore different platforms that, especially public versus private, even hybrid. I think probably in the enterprise world can be a good option because you can get the best of both worlds. But I don't know. I think that should be my point of view about that.
Fair enough. And perhaps one of the most eye-catching bits of news recently around luxury and blockchain was a story in CoinDesk recently on a platform called Aura, which is reportedly what LVMH, the luxury group that owns Louis Vuitton, are working on in partnership with Consensus. Now, Vanessa, I know you can't comment specifically on this platform, but perhaps you could talk in general terms about how companies like LVMH or others you might be working with are approaching this technology and how they see. What can you tell us in general terms about it?
I can't comment on the special news because it was leaked. The way we work with large companies and especially large luxury groups which have different brands, and usually these brands are, independent, is that we look really at the pain points of those companies. Do you have a counterfeit issue? Do you have an issue with engaging with your customer? Do you have issues around managing your databases, which are usually siloed? And just going through that strategic review allows us to surface where blockchain technology can be applied. So we've talked about track and trace. Just doing track and trace is not going to help the industry. It's more than that. It's really an integrated view of the product. It's determining the provenance of the product. It's addressing issues around sustainability, where there's a huge demand from the millennials around, where do the clothes that I wear come from? Where do the goods that I consume come from? Is there any related issues around slavery or forced labor around the clothes that I wear? Probably, 90% of the clothes that we have are produced by people in garment industry, which includes slavery. So it's really responding to a business issue more than anything else. I just want to come back on the question that you've asked to Pedro on the use cases. We see use cases, for example, in track and trace for wine, for the wine industry, in the art industry. We see new forms of tokenization of how to engage with the customers. So all the features that the blockchain and the Ethereum technology bring to the table, you can think about them in solving problems around what these large companies face, but also as the luxury goods is increasingly going digital and everyone is buying now on their cell phones, how can we leverage blockchain technology and AI and this big data analytics that we have access to grow the business and create new business opportunities for the large companies?
And so it sounds like what you're saying is that actually you think blockchain can become a value add rather than just preventing counterfeit. Do you think increasingly, I mean, you mentioned sustainability there, that's obviously a huge trend for consumers and investors. Do you think increasingly that building in blockchain to offer those sorts of things will help people outperform peers as well as just stopping them losing money through counterfeiting?
I think that's really key. I mean, the luxury goods business is very competitive, and it has different layers and different types of clients that it needs to engage to. And we see deep trends So sustainability is one, hyper-personalization of the experience, because now it's not just the purchase of a good, it's the experience around it. And this is where blockchain solutions can come and help enrich the data, identity issues, as Fabien mentioned, creating the persona around the clients, but also the brands, and how they interact with each other. And things like, for example, managing warranties can be enhanced with blockchain. So the user experience from the point of purchase to the next point of sale, or creating secondary markets in luxury goods.
Fabien, did you want?
We are thinking a lot about this kind of use cases, and it's far beyond just moving the old world onto blockchain. It's far beyond than just authenticating items. It's very much more of how we can create an interconnected ecosystem where the customer on the end is the one who has an easy access to everything and not constantly having to move from one data silo to the other. So tokenization, like Vanessa said, is a very important piece. Just the way of how we can tokenize a community, how you could issue a coin as a brand, which could be a loyalty, or it could be just basically a symbol of participation, or it could be a status symbol you receive and that gives you access to events or other things. Those kind of things are rather low-hanging fruits to do. They're rather easy to do. Chipifying handbags and so on is obviously another one, which is easy to do. And then you can make these items ownable. And the beauty is, if you have those things on the blockchain owned, then they are owned by an address. So now you have a reachable customer. Even if he sells it on the secondary market, you have a reachable customer. And this customer is even anonymous to some degree, because he's an address. You don't even need to have his name and his address. This is kind of like what companies try to gather now as the name and the address, because it's the only point of identification. But if you have an address on the blockchain, you don't really need to know where he lives in order to encourage him to be a more loyal customer, or to be really engaged. So there's completely new ways of how you can engage with your customer. There's completely new ways of what kind of experience you can create. And I would predict that in the near future, it will be more about buying into those experiences rather than buying the physical thing. So buying the physical thing is kind of like buying the ticket to the status and to the experience. And that's what becomes very possible with blockchain.
Now, unfortunately, we're running out of time. I just want to quickly, before we go, we've talked a lot about the vision of how blockchain can transform this industry, but how do we get there? What are the blocks at the moment that are stopping us achieving this? Is it the mindsets within these organizations? Is it not necessarily knowing how to combine the technologies, as you touched on, Pedro? How do we get to this vision that we've been discussing? If each of you could perhaps give your thoughts on that.
Okay, I would say it's an asynchronicity of knowledge. So there's a lot of different levels of knowledge, and especially the fashion industry is just catching up to this. I mean, I spoke a year ago on the Fashion Tech Forum in Berlin about it, mentioning blockchain beyond just supply chain use cases, and this is now becoming a thing. So it's knowledge on the one hand, but I think we are getting there, and for example, a common blockchain is a good factor which can bring partnerships together and which can create these synergies. Standardization efforts is an important thing, and also innovation and innovators. So let people build things around that shows even brands, oh, that's cool, we want to be part of this too, we want to do these kind of things too, we want to do similar things, and that's kind of like gets the ball rolling, in my opinion.
Pedro?
Yeah, I agree, and I will also add that I think user adoption is very important. I think it's key. At the end, we are using technology, especially the luxury field is not a technology-driven business, of course. So we are using this, as Fabien said before, to try to engage more with people. Okay? Try to find a tighter, closer experience between the customers and the brands. Okay? But until people our potential customers feel comfortable with the technology, that is likely not to happen. So we need to really invest and try to innovate in making this technology easier to use We need to explain a lot. I think education is a key part of this. And I think between the normal people, blockchain world does not have a very good reputation for the moment. It's a bit fuzzy. I would say in terms of privacy and customer engagement, cases like Facebook and Cambridge Analytica also make people feel frightened to share data or to engage with companies. All these things, we need to invest a lot in education. We need to explain. We need to gather as an industry, work in standards, and ultimately even push for regulations. Because at the end of the day, it's all this framework what will make people feel comfortable and, in my point of view, enable mass adoption.
So I think in general, the luxury industry is cautious when it comes to technology innovation. It's not always seen as an added value. It's sometimes seen as a threat. And in terms of competition and lowering the standards of what the definition of luxury is, I think the definition of luxury and the experience is changing with the new generation. So they will feel more comfortable in the digital world and embracing new technologies. I think there is a reputational risk in terms of a lot of things that happened in the market in the past year. When the market crashed, a lot of enterprises, and not only in the luxury goods business, said, well, let's take a pause here. Let's think about, is this really something that we want to do and have everyone know that we're doing? And so the association of blockchain technology with cryptocurrencies is something that does not play in the favor of widespread adoption. And I would say this is not just for the luxury goods. And then I think it's all about the business case for the companies themselves. I know there are some projects that are more creating communities and more and have a different approach. But when you look at the supply and the demand in the luxury goods, you have very large groups which have access to both. And so matching the supply and the demand in a sort of marketplace powered by blockchain is really the key to success to this.
Unfortunately, we're out of time, but I hope you all join me in thanking a fantastic panel. Thank you very much.